there is a moment most people never talk about. It happens quietly, usually late at night, when the noise of the day finally fades, and you're left alone with your body. The fatigue that doesn't go away, the tightness in your chest you can't quite explain. The feeling that something inside you is slowly wearing down even though every test says you're fine. What if the truth is more unsettling than illness? What if your body isn't failing you at all, but has been desperately trying to heal, while you unknowingly block it every single day? Across ancient monasteries, remote mountain villages, and cultures untouched by modern excess, people lived long lives without pills, without prescriptions, without fear of their own bodies. They didn't discover a miracle drug. They remembered something we forgot. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Because the ending of this story doesn't begin in a hospital. It begins in your kitchen. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear may completely change how you understand health, disease, and the quiet intelligence of your own body. If this message resonates with you, subscribe to the channel Buddhism in Every Moment. Your support gives us the strength to keep sharing wisdom that nourishes not just the body, but the mind and the heart. There is a quiet misunderstanding that has shaped the modern human life more than any virus, any diagnosis, any genetic code. It is the belief that the body is fragile by default, that it is something constantly on the verge of breaking, that sickness is inevitable, decline is normal, and survival depends on how quickly we can intervene from the outside. This belief didn't arrive suddenly. It was taught slowly through commercials, headlines, prescriptions, and casual conversations that normalized exhaustion, pain, anxiety, and chronic discomfort as the price of being an adult. Somewhere along the way, feeling not well became so common that it stopped alarming us. We learned to function around it. We learned to medicate it. We learned to ignore the deeper question it was asking. But beneath all of that noise, there is a truth so simple, so old, that it feels almost dangerous to say out loud in a world built on complexity. Your body was designed to heal itself. Not in a poetic sense. Not as a motivational slogan. But as a biological, intelligent, living system whose primary instinct is survival, repair, and balance. Every cell in your body is already doing this right now without asking for permission. Your skin heals after it's cut. Your immune system fights invaders you never even become aware of. Your liver detoxifies silently. Your gut rebuilds its lining over and over again. Your heart beats without instruction. Your breath returns even when you forget to breathe. This is not weakness. This is resilience so profound that we've grown blind to it. And yet, if the body is so intelligent, why are so many people sick? The answer is uncomfortable, but it is also freeing. Most illness does not come from the body failing to heal. It comes from the body being interrupted day after day, year after year, until healing becomes impossible. Imagine trying to repair a house while someone keeps removing the bricks. Imagine tending a garden while pouring salt into the soil. Imagine asking something to regenerate while continuously depriving it of what it needs to do so. This is what modern life quietly does to the human body. In cities like New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, places that never sleep, you can feel it in the pace of people's steps, the way meals are eaten standing up, in cars, in front of screens, without presence or pause. Food becomes fuel, then convenience, then distraction, rarely nourishment. People eat not because they are hungry, but because they are stressed. They stop eating not because they are satisfied, but because they are full. And somewhere between those two moments, the body's voice is completely ignored. What's tragic is that this disconnection feels normal, and what feels normal rarely feels dangerous. But there are places in the world where this pattern never took hold. remote mountain villages near the Himalayas, quiet coastal regions of Okinawa, rural pockets of Sicily where time seems to move slower, communities where people live into their 90s, not because they chase longevity, but because they never chased excess. They didn't count calories. They didn't track macros. They didn't obsess over biohacks. They simply lived in a way that allowed the body to do what it already knew how to do: heal. What they understood without scientific jargon or clinical trials was that health is not something you add later. It is something you protect daily. Disease, in this view, is not an enemy that attacks randomly. It is a condition, an environment, a result of imbalance. When inflammation becomes chronic, when digestion becomes strained, when blood sugar rises and crashes, when stress hormones never shut off, the body does not suddenly betray you. It adapts. It compensates. It survives the best way it can. Symptoms are not punishments. They are messages. Fatigue is a signal. Brain fog is a signal. Anxiety is a signal. Digestive discomfort is a signal. But in a world trained to silence signals instead of listening to them, we rarely ask what the body is asking for. We ask only how to make the noise stop. This is where ancient wisdom feels almost radical. Long before modern medicine existed, people had to observe. They had to pay attention. They had to notice what strengthened the body and what weakened it, not over hours, but over years. They noticed that certain foods brought clarity, that others created heaviness, that some meals energized the body, while others stole energy quietly. They noticed that how food was eaten mattered as much as what was eaten. They noticed something modern culture forgot: health is not built in moments of crisis. It is built in ordinary days, in the meals you repeat, in the habits you normalize, in the small choices that feel insignificant because they are familiar. The body does not need perfection. It needs permission. Permission to rest. Permission to digest. Permission to repair. And most of all, permission to not be constantly overwhelmed. This is why the idea of curing disease without medicine feels shocking at first. Not because it denies medicine's value, but because it exposes how little we trust the body's intelligence anymore. Medicine is extraordinary when used for emergencies, trauma, acute intervention. But it was never meant to replace daily nourishment. It was never meant to compensate for years of neglect. It was never meant to do the work that food, rhythm, and balance were designed to do. True health is not dramatic. It doesn't announce itself. It feels calm, stable, quiet, and quiet things are easy to ignore until they're gone. This is not a story about rejecting modern life or escaping to a monastery. It's a story about remembering something deeply human in the middle of everything you already are. Because the most powerful realization is not that disease can be cured. It's that much of it never had to begin. Your body has not been waiting for a miracle. It has been waiting for cooperation. And once you understand that, the question is no longer what drug do I need. It becomes something far more intimate: what am I feeding my body every day, and what is it becoming because of it? This is where the journey truly begins. There is a moment of realization that doesn't arrive like a discovery, but like a remembering. A quiet shift where something you've always sensed finally finds words. It's the moment you understand that food was never meant to be neutral. For most of modern life, food has been reduced to numbers: calories in, calories out, protein, fat, carbs, fuel for productivity, something to be optimized, rushed, multitasked, consumed while answering emails or scrolling through bad news. But this way of seeing food strips it of its original purpose. Because food is not just energy. It is instruction. Every bite carries information, signals that speak directly to your cells, your hormones, your immune system, your brain. Food tells your body whether the world is safe or threatening. whether it should repair or defend, whether it can relax into balance or stay locked in survival mode. Ancient cultures understood this without microscopes or medical journals. They didn't need clinical language to describe what they could feel. They observed cause and effect over lifetimes, not lab trials. They noticed that certain foods calmed the body, that others sharpened the mind, that some meals brought lightness, while others brought heaviness that lingered long after eating. To them, eating was not a transaction. It was a relationship. Modern science is only now beginning to articulate what this wisdom always knew. That chronic disease does not appear randomly. That heart disease, diabetes, autoimmune disorders, depression, and cognitive decline share common roots: inflammation, metabolic imbalance, disrupted digestion, and constant stress signals. And what influences all of those, every single day? Food, not occasionally, not dramatically, but consistently. The tragedy is not that we eat poorly. It's that we were taught to see food as separate from health in the first place. We treat eating as a lifestyle choice and medicine as a necessity, when in truth, they were always meant to work together. Food was the first medicine, the original one, the kind that didn't suppress symptoms, but shaped the environment inside the body, so disease struggled to take hold at all. This perspective changes everything. Because if disease is not an invader but a condition, then healing is not a battle, it's a correction, a return to balance, a softening of the internal environment so the body no longer has to fight itself. Think about how often the body is forced into defense. Blood sugar spikes that trigger stress hormones, highly processed foods that inflame the gut, artificial flavors the brain doesn't recognize, meals eaten in a rush, under pressure, while the nervous system is already overloaded. The body does not distinguish between emotional stress and physical stress. It only knows that it is under threat. When this state becomes constant, healing becomes secondary. Repair is postponed. Inflammation becomes chronic. And over time, the body adapts to dysfunction as if it were normal. This is why modern illness feels so confusing. People eat enough. They exercise. They follow advice. Yet something still feels off. Because the question was never only how much you eat, but what kind of message your food is sending. Food grown in living soil carries a different signal than food engineered for shelf life. Meals prepared with care land differently in the body than meals eaten in chaos. Whole foods speak a language the body understands. Ultra-processed foods do not, and confusion at the cellular level always has consequences. This is not about fear. It's about awareness. Once you see food as communication, the body's responses make sense. Cravings are no longer weaknesses, they are signals of imbalance. Digestive discomfort is no longer random, it's feedback. Energy crashes are not failures of willpower, they're warnings. And perhaps most importantly, healing stops feeling distant. Because healing doesn't require waiting until something is wrong enough. It happens quietly, daily, when the internal environment becomes supportive instead of hostile. This is why ancient traditions place such importance on how food was eaten. Meals were slow. Attention was present. Gratitude wasn't symbolic, it was physiological. A calm mind allows proper digestion. A relaxed nervous system improves nutrient absorption. Eating in peace tells the body it is safe to repair. Modern research now confirms this. Stress during meals alters digestion. Mindful eating improves metabolic health. Gut health directly influences mood, immunity, and cognitive function. What once sounded spiritual is now measurable. And yet, knowing this is not enough. Because the greatest obstacle to healing is not ignorance, it's habit. The quiet repetition of choices that feel small, but accumulate into a life. The good news is that the same is true in reverse. Health is not restored through extremes. It's restored through alignment, through choosing foods that reduce inflammation instead of fueling it, through creating meals that stabilize energy instead of hijacking it, through eating in a way that tells the body, again and again, that it can exhale. This is where the idea of prevention becomes powerful, not as restriction, but as respect. Respect for the intelligence of the body. Respect for the fact that healing is not something you force, but something you allow. The body is not asking for perfection. It is asking for consistency, for nourishment that makes sense, for signals it recognizes. And when it receives those signals, something remarkable happens. Not overnight, not dramatically, but steadily. The body begins to shift from defense to repair, from compensation to balance, from surviving to quietly thriving. This is not ancient wisdom versus modern science. It is ancient wisdom finally being explained. And once you understand this, food can never be just food again. There is a quiet kind of damage that doesn't look like damage at all. It doesn't arrive as an emergency. It doesn't stop your life. It simply reshapes it slowly, subtly, until exhaustion feels normal and discomfort becomes part of your identity. This is how modern diets break the human body without us noticing. Not through excess alone, but through repetition. Day after day, meals that were never meant to nourish become the background of life. Food engineered for speed, for dopamine, for shelf life. Eaten quickly, often without hunger, often without attention. Not because people don't care about health, but because they are tired, overstimulated, pulled in too many directions at once. In places like downtown Los Angeles at rush hour, or packed office districts in Manhattan, you can feel it in the air. The constant motion, the coffee clutched like a lifeline, the lunch eaten between meetings, the dinner consumed while answering messages. Bodies moving fast while systems inside them quietly fall behind. The problem isn't that people eat too much. It's that they eat disconnected. Disconnected from hunger. Disconnected from fullness. Disconnected from the signals that once guided human beings effortlessly. Modern food doesn't just feed the body, it hijacks it. Ultra-processed meals are designed to bypass satiety. Sugar spikes dopamine. Refined carbohydrates flood the bloodstream. Artificial flavors trick the brain into craving more of what provides less. The body responds the only way it knows how, by adapting to chaos. Blood sugar rises and crashes. Insulin works overtime. Inflammation becomes a constant hum beneath the surface. At first, nothing feels wrong. You just feel tired, then a little foggy, then anxious for no clear reason, then bloated, or restless, or wired but exhausted. These aren't dramatic symptoms. They don't send you to the hospital. They send you to normalize dysfunction. People say things like, "This is just getting older," or "Everyone feels like this," or "I'll deal with it later." And later quietly becomes years. What's breaking the body isn't a single bad choice. It's the absence of recovery. The human body evolved to handle stress, but not without relief. It can tolerate sugar but not constantly. It can process inflammation but not endlessly. It can survive chaos but not live well inside it. When meals are rushed, digestion suffers. When digestion suffers, nutrient absorption drops. When nutrients are missing, the body compensates. And compensation, when prolonged, becomes illness. This is how disease forms quietly. Not as an event, but as an environment. An environment where the gut lining weakens, where beneficial bacteria disappear, where stress hormones stay elevated long after danger has passed, where the body no longer knows when it is safe to heal. In this state, even healthy food can feel ineffective, because healing is not just about what you eat, it's about the conditions under which your body receives it. Eating while stress sends one message. Eating while calm sends another. The body listens. And yet, Modern culture teaches the opposite of listening. It teaches pushing through, ignoring fatigue, treating hunger as an inconvenience, treating rest as something to earn. This is why so many people feel betrayed by their bodies. They did what they were told. They stayed productive. They stayed busy, and their body responded with resistance. But the body was never the enemy. It was the messenger. Look closely at the patterns. Digestive issues rise where processed food dominates. Anxiety increases where blood sugar swings wildly. Chronic inflammation grows where meals lack minerals, fiber, and balance. None of this is accidental. When the diet loses diversity, the microbiome suffers. When the microbiome suffers, immunity weakens. When immunity weakens, inflammation spreads. When inflammation spreads, disease finds room to grow. This cascade doesn't happen overnight. It happens invisibly. That's what makes it dangerous. In rural areas outside Florence, or small coastal towns in Greece, meals still unfold slowly. Food is simple. Ingredients are familiar. Eating is an event, not an interruption. The body receives consistent signals of safety. In contrast, modern diets bombard the body with confusion, mixed messages, artificial cues, constant stimulation without nourishment. And when the body is confused, it cannot prioritize healing. It prioritizes survival. Survival mode is not meant to be permanent. But modern eating keeps people trapped there. This is why fatigue persists even after sleep. Why weight gain happens despite effort. Why inflammation lingers without clear cause. The body is doing exactly what it should given the conditions it's been placed in. This realization can feel unsettling, because it means there is no single villain to fight, no quick fix to chase. But it is also empowering, because environments can be changed. The modern diet didn't break the body because it was too weak. It broke the body because it was too patient. Patient enough to adapt. Patient enough to compensate. Patient enough to wait for you to notice. And the moment you do, that's when healing stops being mysterious. Not because the body suddenly learns how to heal, but because you finally stop standing in its way. There is something quietly humbling about the fact that some of the most powerful healing tools on earth do not come in bottles, do not require prescriptions, and do not announce themselves as extraordinary. They sit unnoticed in kitchens. They are passed over in grocery aisles. They are so familiar that we mistake them for ordinary. And yet, when the body begins to break down, these are often the first things it reaches for. Before supplements, before pharmaceuticals, before the language of immune protocols, human beings learned to survive by listening to what strengthened them. Over generations, certain foods earned trust not through belief, but through results. When illness was common and medicine was scarce, what worked was remembered. What didn't was forgotten. Among those remembered foods, 3 quietly stood at the center of resilience: garlic, ginger, and turmeric. They were not consumed for trends. They were relied upon. Garlic was never just flavor. It was protection. When people traveled long distances, when communities faced unfamiliar environments, when infections spread without explanation, garlic was there not as superstition, but as strategy. Something in its sharpness, its intensity, signaled strength. It warmed the body. It sharpened the senses. It seemed to push illness away before it could settle in. What modern science later confirmed is what the body already knew. Garlic speaks directly to the immune system. It strengthens the body's defenses without overstimulating them. It doesn't force the immune response into aggression. It teaches it discernment. To fight when needed. To rest when not. In a world where immunity is often discussed only after it fails, garlic reminds us that prevention is quiet. It happens before symptoms appear. It happens when the internal environment becomes hostile to disease, not hospitable to it. Ginger works differently. Where garlic guards, ginger moves. It brings circulation where there is stagnation, warmth where there is cold, flow where there is tension. People have always known this instinctively. When digestion felt heavy, ginger was used. When nausea rose, ginger calmed it. When joints stiffened, ginger softened them. But ginger's deeper gift is not just physical, it is rhythmic. It supports the body's ability to process, to move things through, to let go. In a life where stress tightens everything, ginger encourages release. It tells the digestive system it can do its job without urgency. It tells the nervous system it can downshift. Many people live with the quiet discomfort of digestion that never feels right, energy that never fully returns after eating. Ginger doesn't overpower this. It gently restores trust between the body and the act of nourishment. Turmeric completes this trio in a way that feels almost symbolic. Golden, grounding, steady. Where garlic defends and ginger moves, turmeric calms. It speaks to inflammation, the silent fire beneath so many modern illnesses. Inflammation that does not burn visibly, but slowly erodes joints, clouds the mind, stiffens the arteries, and accelerates aging. Turmeric doesn't silence inflammation by force. It addresses its cause. It reduces the body's need to stay in a state of alert. It whispers to the immune system that the threat has passed. This is why turmeric has always been associated with longevity. Not because it makes the body stronger in moments of stress, but because it prevents stress from becoming chronic. It helps the body remember what balance feels like. What makes these three foods extraordinary is not their individual power, but their harmony. Together, they address the core systems that determine health, immunity, digestion, and inflammation. When these systems are supported, the body does not need to fight constantly. It can redirect energy toward repair. There is something deeply reassuring in this. Healing does not require complexity. It requires consistency. Small, repeated choices that tell the body the same story every day. You are supported, not threatened. In many households, these foods appear almost ritualistically. Garlic crushed and left to rest. Ginger simmered into tea. Turmeric blended gently into meals. Not rushed, not forced, just included. These acts may seem insignificant in isolation, but the body experiences them cumulatively. It remembers patterns far better than it responds to intensity. This is why dramatic detoxes fail where simple habits succeed. The body does not trust sudden change. It trusts repetition. There is also an emotional layer to this nourishment that modern discussions often miss. These foods carry memory, warmth, familiarity, safety. They remind the body of times when eating was slower, when care was embedded in preparation, when meals were acts of presence rather than obligation. Healing is not just biochemical. It is relational. When the body senses care, it responds differently. It digests better. It absorbs more. It relaxes enough to heal. This is why these foods feel grounding, even before their effects can be measured. They reconnect eating with intention. In a culture obsessed with doing more, taking more, pushing harder, garlic, ginger, and turmeric offer a different lesson. That strength can be built quietly. That protection does not need to be loud. That the most powerful interventions often look like nothing special at all. They do not promise miracles. They offer cooperation. And cooperation is exactly what the body has been waiting for. When immunity is supported instead of provoked, when digestion is eased instead of pressured, when inflammation is calmed instead of ignored, the body does something remarkable. It stops fighting. And in that stillness, healing finally has room to begin. Green was never meant to be a trend. It was never supposed to be a phase, a label, or something you try for a few weeks before moving on. Green was always life itself, quiet, steady, renewing. Long before nutrition had names and categories, people understood this instinctively. Wherever humans settled, they planted greens first. Not fruit trees, not grains. Greens. Because when the body was weak, when recovery was. Hey be letter 1 EAFTD stroke, letter 1 EA7 UV, I letter 1 EBFT ton B letter 1 E, D9 letter 1 ED9, I dung Theo Dan, Y acute cho PH letter 1 EA7N, East Dossier 1 E Sich 1 EC9, D stroller 1 ECNH Ve Theo Yeru. C letter 1 EA7U Bern Traern. Kong VI, letter 1 EBF, Trong Canvas. T letter 1 EAFT Canvas. VI, letter 1 EBF, T letter 1 EAT Sao, S letter was EA, FC Vacois Sich I letter 1 EC1 U Sao Han. C8 letter 1 EA1M, D stroke letter 1 EBFN. Sao T letter 1 EB3M Trong. Tri Tim Con NG letter 1 B0, letter 1 EDDI. Hey VI letter 1 EBFT, M letter 1 EA1 L letter 1 EA1 Savaco 1 Sal letter 1 EA3 M Zuck. VI letter 1 EBFT Bay Irons, U letter 1 ED1T. Kong Chia T letter 1 EEBNG, P8 letter 1 EA7N, Kong Dung Icon. VI letter 1 EBFE, TB letter EB1NG Ongon NNE letter 1 EEF, TI letter 1 EBF NG AN. Kong VI letter 1 EBFT, L letter 1 EB7P, L letter 1 EA1IN, letter 1 ED9 I Dung C, letter 1 EE7 A Cock PH, letter 1 EA7N TR, letter 1 B0, letter 1 EDBC Do. Mabam Vows letter 1 B0, letter 1 EDDN, Baydan Y acute Adis tree Allah clitter 1 EC3 VI, letter 1 EB, FT Chin, Zoken letter 1 EDD9 Idung C letter 1 EE7 A, PH letter 1 EA7N. Ki Thok Vow Sao Trong, PH letter 1 EA7N, Nay D stroke letter Ni C3, Lam B letter 1 EADT, Laren N a letter 1 ED9 Idung Chin, Chin PH letter 1 EE5C, Con GI letter 1 EA3, B letter 1 EB1 NG letter 1 EEFNG Cow T letter 1 EEB Hey, V letter 1 EA5NT, letter 1 B0, letter 1 EE3NG. D Sao Vau Tam Tri NG letter 1 B0, letter 1 EDDING Strength, as modern culture defines it, is loud. It is measured in extremes in intensity, in excess, in how much the body can be pushed before it gives way. Protein is marketed as fuel for domination, for sculpting, for conquering weakness. And so eating becomes another form of pressure, another demand placed on the body to perform. But there is another kind of strength, one that does not announce itself, one that does not come with adrenaline or aggression, a strength that lasts. This is the strength that legumes quietly offer. Beans, lentils, chickpeas, these foods have never needed convincing slogans. They have fed civilizations through scarcity, sustained communities through hardship, and supported bodies across long, unremarkable lives. Not lives defined by peak performance, but by endurance, by stability, by resilience that doesn't burn out. Where animal-based protein often arrives with heaviness, legumes arrive with balance. They do not flood the system. They do not shock the body into response. They build slowly, patiently, without demanding payment later. What makes this profound is not just nutritional, it is philosophical. Legumes nourish without harm. They strengthen without inflaming. They support without overwhelming. In a world that equates pain with progress, legumes challenge the assumption that strength must come at a cost. They prove that the body can be built without being burdened, that nourishment does not have to be violent to be effective. There is a reason people who eat legumes regularly often feel grounded rather than stimulated. Their energy does not spike and crash. Their hunger does not shout. Their bodies settle into rhythm. This steadiness matters more than we realize. Blood sugar that remains stable keeps the nervous system calm. A calm nervous system allows digestion to work properly. Proper digestion allows nutrients to be absorbed. And when nutrients are absorbed consistently, the body stops asking for more through cravings and excess. Legumes teach the body that it is safe. They provide protein wrapped in fiber, minerals, and complex carbohydrates, a combination that feels like a conversation rather than a command. The body responds by slowing down, by trusting that nourishment will continue to arrive, by releasing the urgency that leads to overeating and metabolic stress. Many people carry quiet fear around protein. Fear of not having enough. Fear of losing strength. Fear of inadequacy. But these fears are rarely about nutrition, they are about identity. About what it means to be capable. About keeping up. Legumes offer a different narrative. They support muscle without aggression. They support endurance without exhaustion. They build tissue while protecting the heart, stabilizing blood sugar, and feeding the gut. This is not weakness. This is wisdom. In places where people live long lives, regions where health feels unremarkable, because it is so common, legumes are not a substitute. They are the foundation. Meals revolve around them quietly, not as a statement, not as a trend, simply as nourishment that works. There is something deeply calming about food that does not demand constant attention. Legumes do not ask to be eaten quickly. They do not seduce the brain into overconsumption. They fill you in a way that allows you to stop. This ability to stop without struggle is one of the most healing gifts food can offer. When the body feels secure, it stops hoarding. It stops clinging. It stops overreacting. Weight stabilizes. Energy evens out. Mood softens. The need to control food loosens its grip. And here is where the deeper healing happens. Legumes feed not only the body, but the ecosystem within it. Their fiber nourishes beneficial gut bacteria, which in turn regulate immunity, inflammation, and even emotional resilience. This connection is subtle but profound. A nourished gut sends different signals to the brain than a starved one. Clarity replaces fog. Patience replaces irritability. Focus replaces restlessness. These changes are rarely attributed to protein, but they should be. Because protein is not just about muscle. It is about signaling safety at the most fundamental level. Eating legumes regularly is an act of trust. Trust that the body does not need extremes to thrive. Trust that nourishment can be gentle and still effective. Trust that healing does not require force. In a culture obsessed with doing more, legumes invite you to do less and receive more. They ask you to slow your expectations, to let strength develop quietly, to allow your body to rebuild itself without fear. This is protein without pain, strength without struggle, nourishment that does not ask you to sacrifice your peace. And when the body feels supported instead of pressured, something remarkable happens. It stops resisting. It stops bracing. It begins to cooperate. That cooperation is the beginning of true, lasting strength. There is a quiet truth most people never suspect: the way you feel about your life is deeply connected to what is happening in your gut. Not metaphorically, biologically, emotionally, intimately. Long before science named neurotransmitters or mapped neural pathways, people noticed something simple. When digestion was calm, the mind was clearer. When the gut was unsettled, thoughts became restless, emotions unpredictable, and sleep elusive. What we now call anxiety, irritability, or low mood often began not in the mind, but far lower, out of sight, out of awareness. The gut is not just a digestive tube. It is a sensing organ, a communication hub, a living ecosystem that listens to everything you eat, everything you feel, everything you endure. Modern life places extraordinary pressure on this system. Stress tightens the gut. Processed food starves beneficial bacteria. Antibiotics, poor sleep, and constant stimulation disrupt balance. Slowly, the internal environment shifts from harmony to hostility. And when that happens, the gut sends signals of distress upward. This is why so many people feel emotionally fragile without understanding why. Why small frustrations feel overwhelming. Why calm feels out of reach even when life appears stable. The body is speaking, but the language is unfamiliar. Fermented foods translate that language back into something the body understands. They do not work by force. They restore conversation. Fermentation transforms ordinary ingredients into living nourishment. Vegetables, grains, and legumes become carriers of beneficial bacteria microorganisms that have co-evolved with the human body for thousands of years. These bacteria do not merely digest food. They regulate immunity. They influence inflammation. They produce compounds that communicate directly with the brain. When the gut microbiome is supported, the body behaves differently. Stress hormones quiet down. Immune responses become more precise. Mood stabilizes. Sleep deepens. The nervous system finally receives the message it has been waiting for. It is safe. This is why people often describe fermented foods not as energizing, but as grounding. There is a sense of internal order that returns, a feeling that the body is no longer fighting itself. In cultures where fermentation remained a daily practice, emotional resilience was woven into everyday life. Meals were accompanied by small amounts of fermented vegetables, miso broths, or cultured foods not as medicine, but as maintenance. The gut was cared for quietly, consistently, without drama. Contrast this with modern patterns. Digestive discomfort is common. Bloating is normalized. Mood swings are dismissed as personality. We separate mental health from physical health as if they occupy different bodies. They do not. The gut produces the majority of the body's serotonin, the neurotransmitter most associated with well-being. It plays a role in regulating stress responses, appetite, and sleep cycles. When the gut ecosystem is damaged, these systems fall out of sync. No amount of willpower can override that. Fermented foods help rebuild this ecosystem gently. They introduce diversity where monotony has taken hold. They strengthen the gut lining, reducing the constant low-grade inflammation that drains energy and clouds thinking. They train the immune system to respond accurately instead of overreacting. But perhaps their most profound effect is emotional. When digestion improves, people often feel calmer without knowing why. They become less reactive, less tense, more patient with themselves and others. The world feels slightly softer, less sharp around the edges. This is not coincidence. It is physiology finding balance. Fermentation also teaches patience. These foods take time to develop. They cannot be rushed. Their benefits arrive gradually, building with repetition rather than intensity. This mirrors how the body heals not through sudden change, but through steady support. In a society addicted to instant results, fermented foods quietly challenge that addiction. They remind the body that healing is a process, not a performance. There is also something deeply reassuring about eating foods that are alive, foods that continue to transform even after preparation. They reconnect us to an older relationship with nourishment, one based on trust rather than control. Many people approach fermented foods cautiously at first. The flavors are unfamiliar. The tang can feel surprising, but the body recognizes them quickly. Cravings shift. Digestion adapts. What once felt strange begins to feel necessary. This is the body remembering what it was designed to work with. Small amounts are enough. Consistency matters more than quantity. A little every day sends a powerful signal to the gut: diversity is welcome here. Balance is returning. When the gut heals, the mind follows. When the mind settles, the body relaxes. When the body relaxes, repair becomes possible. This is why gut health is not a side topic in healing, it is central. It is the bridge between nourishment and emotion, between food and peace. And peace, more than any supplement or strategy, is what allows the body to truly heal. Not loudly, not suddenly, but from the inside out, exactly the way it was always meant to. Modern life is addicted to intensity. Quick energy, fast results, sudden motivation. We drink it, eat it, chase it, then wonder why our bodies feel unstable, restless, and exhausted all at once. The truth is, most people are not tired because they lack energy. They are tired because their energy has no rhythm. Whole grains were never meant to excite the body. They were meant to sustain it. In traditional societies, grains formed the quiet center of daily life. Not as a luxury, not as a trend, but as a steady presence that made everything else possible. They did not create spikes. They created continuity. The kind of energy that allows a person to work, think, walk, and rest without feeling like they are constantly recovering from themselves. This is a form of nourishment modern culture has almost completely forgotten. Refined carbohydrates promise speed. They enter the bloodstream quickly, raise blood sugar fast, and trigger a rush that feels like relief until it collapses. The body responds with insulin, stress hormones, and cravings that demand more stimulation. What feels like energy is often just alarm. Whole grains speak a different language. They arrive slowly. They release glucose gradually. They tell the body there is no emergency. This message changes everything. When blood sugar remains stable, the nervous system calms. When the nervous system calms, digestion improves. When digestion improves, nutrients are absorbed more efficiently. And when nourishment becomes predictable, the body stops bracing for scarcity. This is why people who return to whole grains often describe a sense of grounding. Their hunger becomes quieter. Their moods level out. Their focus lasts longer without effort. They stop needing constant stimulation to feel awake. This is not about carbohydrates. It is about trust. The body does not thrive on unpredictability. It thrives on patterns it can rely on. Whole grains provide that reliability. They anchor the day. They offer a baseline of energy that does not need to be chased or corrected. In a culture that glorifies hustle, this kind of nourishment can feel almost countercultural. It does not enhance productivity in short bursts. It enhances sustainability. And sustainability is the difference between burning out and staying whole. There is also a deeper emotional effect to steady energy that often goes unnoticed. When energy is stable, patience increases, reactivity decreases. The mind feels less urgent, less pressured. Decisions become clearer. The world feels more manageable. This is not coincidence. It is chemistry aligning with rhythm. Whole grains feed not only the body, but the microbiome that supports it. Their fiber nourishes gut bacteria that regulate inflammation, immunity, and even emotional balance. Over time, this creates a sense of internal order, a feeling that the body is no longer improvising, but functioning as intended. In many modern diets, grains were not removed because they were harmful. They were removed because they were misunderstood, stripped of their fiber and nutrients. Refined grains became something entirely different: empty, destabilizing, misleading. Whole grains are not the problem. Disconnection is. When grains are consumed in their complete form, they do not overwhelm the body. They complete it. They provide a foundation on which other foods can build. Vegetables, legumes, herbs, and healthy fats all find balance when anchored by steady nourishment. There is a reason meals built around whole grains feel satisfying without heaviness. They fill without flooding. They nourish without demanding attention. They allow you to stop eating without feeling deprived. This ability to feel satisfied, to genuinely feel finished, is one of the most healing experiences food can offer. Whole grains also reconnect us to time. They take longer to cook, longer to chew, longer to digest. They resist the pace of urgency. In doing so, they gently retrain the body to slow down. Slowness is not inefficiency. It is recovery. In regions where people live long, balanced lives, grains are not feared. They are respected, prepared simply, eaten regularly, trusted. Modern health culture often swings between extremes: restriction and indulgence, elimination and obsession. Whole grains invite something quieter: balance. They ask for consistency, not control, presence, not performance. When energy becomes steady, the body stops searching for shortcuts. It stops craving spikes that lead to crashes. It stops mistaking stimulation for vitality. Vitality is calm. It is durable. It lasts. In a world addicted to highs, whole grains offer something far more valuable: a sense of internal stability that carries you through the day without stealing from tomorrow. And when the body no longer lives in anticipation of the next crash, it finally has the space to heal, not dramatically, but reliably, from the ground up. There was a time when kitchens were quiet places of medicine. Before labels and dosages, before pills and protocols, healing began with scent, warmth, and intention. Herbs were not decorations. Spices were not accessories. They were chosen carefully, combined thoughtfully, and used daily, not to fix a problem, but to prevent one from ever forming. Modern culture reduced them to flavor. Ancient wisdom understood them as guidance. Every herb and spice carries a personality. Some warm the body, some cool it, some calm the nervous system, some awaken digestion. They do not act randomly. They communicate, and when used consistently, they shape the internal environment in subtle but profound ways. This is why traditional kitchens felt different. The air itself carried reassurance. The slow bloom of aroma in hot oil, the quiet ritual of grinding, toasting, simmering. These acts were not rushed because they were not optional. They were care, expressed through repetition. Spices teach the body how to digest life. Cinnamon steadies blood sugar and warms circulation. Ginger wakes digestion without aggression. Black pepper opens pathways so nourishment can be absorbed. Cumin and coriander soothe the gut, reducing tension before it becomes discomfort. Turmeric calms inflammation long before pain demands attention. Each one plays a role. Together they create balance. What makes this powerful is not the amount used, but the frequency. A small pinch, repeated daily, sends a consistent signal to the body: support is present. You do not need to overreact. This is how healing actually works. The body does not respond best to large, dramatic interventions. It responds to reliability, to messages it can trust. Herbs and spices deliver those messages gently, without shocking the system. There is also something deeply human about the sensory experience they create. Smell is the fastest path to memory. Aroma bypasses logic and speaks directly to the nervous system. The body recognizes familiar scents as safety, comfort, home. This is why a simple cup of spiced tea can calm anxiety when nothing else seems to work. Why certain meals feel grounding even before the first bite. The nervous system relaxes in the presence of signals it understands. Modern stress disconnects us from our senses. We eat without tasting, cook without noticing, rush through meals as if nourishment were a task to complete rather than an experience to receive. Herbs and spices resist this disconnection. They demand attention. They slow preparation. They invite presence. In this presence, digestion improves. When digestion improves, absorption increases. When absorption increases, the body becomes nourished with less effort. Healing does not require more, it requires awareness. This is where the idea of food as daily medicine becomes real, not symbolic. No extreme cleanse, no rigid rules, just gentle alignment. Creating your own spice blends can be an act of self-knowledge. Choosing what warms you, what soothes you, what grounds you. Not because a chart says so, but because your body responds. Evening rituals matter here. A warm infusion of herbs before sleep. A meal seasoned intentionally rather than habitually. These moments tell the body that the day is complete, that it can release vigilance and enter repair. Healing does not begin when the body is pushed harder. It begins when the body feels safe enough to rest. Herbs and spices excel at creating that safety. They reduce inflammation quietly, improve circulation subtly, support detoxification without strain. All while adding pleasure to eating something modern health advice often forgets is essential. Pleasure is not indulgence. It is information. When food is pleasurable and nourishing at the same time, the body relaxes into trust. When trust returns, healing accelerates. There is also humility in using herbs and spices. They remind us that we do not need control over everything. That healing is not about dominance, but cooperation. About working with the body rather than overriding it. Nature's pharmacy does not shout, it whispers. And those who learn to listen find that health does not need to be chased. It unfolds, slowly and reliably, through daily rituals that feel ordinary until you realize how extraordinary their effects truly are. This is not ancient superstition returning. It is ancient understanding being remembered. And when the kitchen becomes a place of intention again, the body responds not with resistance, but with gratitude expressed quietly, through balance, clarity, and a sense of being at ease within itself. Sweetness has always held a quiet danger not because it is wrong, but because it is powerful. It comforts. It rewards. It soothes the nervous system in moments when life feels heavy. And when sweetness is misunderstood, it becomes something we chase instead of something that heals us. Fruit was never meant to be chased. In its natural form, fruit is one of nature's most generous offerings. It asks for nothing in return. No cooking, no processing, no alteration. It arrives complete, carrying water, fiber, vitamins, antioxidants, and energy in perfect proportion. It is sweetness with intelligence. But like many gifts, it only reveals its true value when approached with respect. Ancient cultures understood this intuitively. Fruit was eaten with awareness, not abandon. It was timed carefully, consumed slowly, appreciated fully. Not as dessert, not as filler, but as nourishment that arrived gently, without burdening the body. Modern habits reversed this wisdom. Fruit became something to add on top of fullness, blended into sugar-dense drinks, eaten without pause, without listening. And then confusion followed. Blood sugar spikes, digestive discomfort, cravings that felt endless. People blamed the fruit, not the way it was used. But fruit was never the problem. Fruit digests quickly. It moves fast through the body, delivering hydration and energy efficiently. When eaten on an empty stomach or before heavier meals, it does exactly what it was designed to do: wake the system, nourish cells, and pass through cleanly. The body receives it with ease. When eaten after heavy foods, fruit gets trapped. Fermentation occurs. Discomfort follows. And the body is blamed for reacting appropriately to confusion. This is where ancient timing becomes modern clarity. Eating fruit earlier in the day, or before meals, allows its benefits to unfold without conflict. The fiber slows sugar absorption. The water content hydrates tissues. The antioxidants reduce inflammation quietly. The body feels refreshed, not overwhelmed. Berries sharpen the mind and protect the brain. Apples steady digestion and nourish the gut. Citrus awakens the liver and immune system. Papaya and pineapple support digestion with natural enzymes. Each fruit carries a specific intelligence, a role it plays without ego. But perhaps the most overlooked aspect of fruit is how it teaches moderation without force. Fruit is sweet enough to satisfy, yet structured enough to stop. When eaten whole, with fiber intact, it naturally limits excess. You feel complete before you feel heavy. The body signals satisfaction clearly, without negotiation. This clarity is rare in modern eating. Fruit also reconnects us to seasons. It reminds the body that change is natural, that nourishment shifts throughout the year. Summer fruits cool and hydrate. Autumn fruits ground and stabilize. Eating seasonally aligns the body with rhythms it evolved to trust. There is comfort in this alignment. The body relaxes when it recognizes patterns older than stress. And then there is the act of eating itself. Fruit invites slowness. It asks to be held, bitten, chewed. It engages the senses fully: color, scent, texture, taste. This sensory engagement pulls the mind into the present moment, where digestion improves and overeating fades. Mindfulness is not a technique here. It is a consequence. When fruit is eaten with attention, sweetness no longer feels dangerous. It feels nourishing. It feels safe. This is why fruit often carries emotional healing as well. It softens cravings. It reduces the urge to punish the body or overindulge it. It restores a sense of kindness in eating something many people have lost. The final lesson fruit offers is perhaps the most important of all. Health does not come from restriction. It comes from understanding. Understanding when to eat. Understanding how much is enough. Understanding that the body speaks clearly when we finally listen. Fruit does not heal by overpowering the system. It heals by cooperating with it. And when sweetness is returned to its rightful place, simple, seasonal, mindful, it stops being a threat and becomes what it always was: nature's quiet medicine. This is where the journey comes full circle. Not with control, not with fear, but with trust. Trust that the body knows how to heal when it is nourished wisely. Trust that food, when chosen and timed with care, can restore balance without force. Trust that health is not something you earn through struggle, but something you allow through alignment. Your body was never broken. It was never weak. It was waiting. Waiting for you to stop fighting it. Waiting for you to feed it with intention. Waiting for you to remember that healing does not arrive through extremes, but through daily acts of care that feel almost too simple to be powerful. And yet they are. This is not the end of the story. It is the return to a beginning the body has never forgotten. This journey has never really been about food. Food was only the doorway. What this story reveals slowly, quietly, and unmistakably is a deeper truth. Many of us have been separated from the body is not broken. It is responsive. Every chapter, every reflection, every simple ingredient points back to the same realization that health is not something we chase later, but something we either support or interrupt every single day. We began by questioning a belief so ingrained. It feels invisible, that sickness is inevitable and decline is normal. Yet as the layers unfolded, another picture emerged. Across cultures, climates, and centuries, human beings thrived not because they had superior medicine, but because they lived in cooperation with their bodies. They ate in ways that reduced inflammation instead of feeding it. They honored digestion instead of rushing it. They created internal environments where healing could happen naturally, without force. The 9 foods were never meant to be miracles. They were reminders. Garlic, ginger, and turmeric showed us that protection does not need to be aggressive. Greens taught us that vitality grows quietly. Legumes redefined strength as stability, not strain. Fermented foods revealed that peace often begins in the gut. Whole grains reminded us that steady energy outlasts stimulation. Herbs and spices brought healing back into daily ritual. Fruit returned sweetness to its rightful place, gentle, mindful, and supportive. Together, they formed more than a diet. They formed a philosophy that says health is built through consistency, not extremes. Through listening, not controlling. Through alignment, not pressure. The most powerful insight from this story is not that food can heal, but that the body already knows how. It only asks for the right conditions: calm digestion, balanced nourishment, stable energy, and signals of safety. When those conditions are present, healing is not dramatic. It is inevitable. So what is the lesson here? The lesson is that modern life did not make us sick because we are weak. It made us sick because we stopped paying attention. We learned to ignore fatigue, to normalize discomfort, to silence signals instead of understanding them. This story invites us to reverse that pattern, gently. Applying this wisdom today does not require perfection. It requires intention. Start with one meal eaten without distraction. Add one food that nourishes instead of excites. Notice how your body responds, not with judgment, but with curiosity. Create small rituals that bring calm back into eating. Let consistency do the work that willpower never could. Health does not come from doing more. It comes from doing what supports life, repeatedly. Now I want to hear from you. What part of this story resonated with you the most? Have you noticed changes in your body when you eat more mindfully or return to simpler foods? What challenges do you face when trying to live this way in the modern world? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments so others can learn from your perspective. Your voice may be exactly what someone else needs to hear. And if this journey brought you clarity, comfort, or a new way of seeing your own body, subscribe to the channel Buddhism in Every Moment. Your support helps us continue creating content that nourishes not just the body, but the mind and the heart. This is not the end. It is a return to wisdom that has always been within reach.